Hello and welcome to this Tuesday edition of the World Report. I'm Arjun, Samar, Mahendran. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. Viewers, there's a big news for international professionals and students in the US. The Trump administration has clarified who's affected by the controversial new $100,000 H-1B visa fee. Now, the new guidance, viewers, brings relief to many who are already inside the US, inside the country, especially Indian tech workers and recent graduates. Now, here's what you need to know, fast and simple. First up, if you're a student on an F1 visa switching to an H-1B visa, you're in the clear. What does that mean? Well, no 100K fee will apply to you. Now, the same also, in fact, goes for L1 visa holders, just like you see here, or those already on H-1Bs, in fact, who are applying for further extension. There's no extra added cost to that. Next up, anyone currently who's inside the United States, this also includes workers and students who won't face this fee. Now, as long as they stay put inside the United States of America. However, if you're filing from outside the country or even must leave and re-enter the country, the $100,000 charge automatically kicks in. Now, in case you are still worried about traveling, the USCIS has in fact confirmed that the current H-1B holders can freely leave and return without any new or additional penalties. And for critical roles, meanwhile, there's a narrow door open. Companies can now directly request waivers if American national interest, so to say, is at stake. So for now, there are no sudden surprises for those already living and working in the US. But if you're applying from abroad, get ready to pay big. Now, the rule is in effect as we speak, and the legal battles may not be far behind. Meanwhile, check out this conversation I had with New York immigration attorney Nicole Gunara. What will be the sheer impact of this on Indian students?
I think this is definitely a ray of light for Indian students. I do think that when it comes to applying to roles, it's going to be an easier conversation. No more is this consideration of, hey, is the $100,000 fee going to be something that an employer needs to pay for me? Employers would really be more willing to consider that sponsorship or even enrolling you into the lottery, knowing that if you stay domestically in the United States and you do not leave, you can still get into the H-1B status and continue working in the US for the long term.
All right. Could you quickly explain which H-1B applicants are actually subject to the new $100,000 fee from the Trump administration?
It would be individuals who are outside of the United States. So take, for example, if you are currently in India and you have been enrolled in the H-1B lottery and you won, and your company filed the H-1B application for consular notification, meaning that you're going to activate your H-1B by going to the US consulate and then travel to the United States, that's where the $100,000 fee does kick in. So if you're not domestic in the US and you're not changing into or filing for an extension or amending into the H-1B, then you would be counted against this and you would need to pay the $100,000 fee.
Nicole, a very, very important question, a central point of the entire debate has been American companies and what effect will this $100,000 fee have on their hiring? So does this change the semantics a bit or do they remain same?
I do believe it does change the semantics a bit. Even since this news came out a few hours ago, we've had a lot of corporate clients of ours actually start the green light in terms of moving forward with their H-1B applicants and individuals who were in that talent pipeline that did need sponsorship. So I do think that this does show a shift moving forward in terms of how companies will be treating the H-1B, considering that it seems that it's only a limited number of individuals who are truly impacted by this visa levy.
Last about maintaining Israel-Hamas ceasefire, President Donald Trump said US will give the situation a little chance in his words in hopes that there will be less violence in the war-besieged enclave. Now, Israeli forces meanwhile on Sunday killed dozens in strikes in Gaza after it accused Hamas militants of killing 2 IDF soldiers. Trump meanwhile has said Hamas must behave or face the consequences. They have to be good, and if they're not good, they'll be eradicated, he said. Listen in.
You just alluded to the violence in the Middle East. What steps is the administration taking to maintain the ceasefire?
Well, a lot of steps, and right now it's in the hands of others. You know, we have 59 countries that agreed to the deal. We have a peace in the Middle East for the first time ever. We made a deal with Hamas that, you know, they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice, and if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to. They'll be eradicated, and they know that.
We're shifting our focus to the Middle East, where Palestinians in Khan Yunis and across the Gaza Strip, in fact, waited anxiously on Monday as two of US President Donald Trump's envoys traveled to Israel to shore up tenuous ceasefire in Gaza. Now, it comes a day after the fragile deal was tested by a major flare-up of violence in the besieged enclave. Meanwhile, on Sunday, Israel had threatened to halt shipments of humanitarian aid into Gaza, and its forces, in fact, killed dozens in strikes there after accusing Hamas militants of killing two Israeli soldiers. Israel, meanwhile, said late in the day that it had resumed enforcing the ceasefire. Meanwhile, funeral services were held Monday for some of the dozens of people killed earlier by Israeli strikes across the Strip. Houthi rebels, meanwhile, have released 5 Yemeni United Nations staff members and allowed 15 international ones to move freely within the UN compound after detaining them in Sana'a over a weekend, a UN spokesperson said Monday. The UN spokesperson also said that Houthi security forces, in fact, had left the compound of the latest such raids on international organizations. The Houthis have a long-running crackdown against the UN and others working in Yemen's rebel-held areas, including capital Sana'a, the coastal city of Hodeidah, and the rebel stronghold in the northern province of Sadr. Here's more.
And I think, as you are well aware, and you saw the note that we issued earlier today, where we were informed by our team in Yemen that all 15 UN international staff are now free to move inside the UN compound in Sana'a. And they've also been in contact with their respective UN entities and families. This follows the October 18th incursion into our compound by the de facto authorities. Also, the 5 national staff that had been detained during that raid on October 18th have also now been released. As a reminder, 53 of our national colleagues in Yemen continue to be arbitrarily detained. Just want to flag a number of phone calls the Secretary General's made this morning, all on the situation in the Middle East, including the specific situation in Yemen. He spoke to the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud. He spoke with the Foreign Minister of Iran, Said Abbas Araghchi, and he spoke twice with the Foreign Minister of Oman, Said Badr bin Hamad bin Hamoud Al Saidi.
US President Donald Trump pulled back Monday on his previous assertion that Ukraine could very well win back all territory from Russia, now saying he in fact doesn't think they will. They could still win it, Trump said of Ukraine during a cabinet meeting with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Now, Trump on Friday, viewers called on Kiev and Moscow both to stop where they are and end their brutal war following a lengthy White House meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, another shift in his position on the long-dragging war. Here's more.
President, on the war that you haven't solved yet, the Ukraine-Russia situation, have you now locked in a meeting? And can you explain, just a few weeks ago at UNGA, you said that Ukraine could possibly win the war and
well, they could.
Territory, but now
they could still win it. I don't think they will, but they could still win it. I never said they would win it. I said they could win. Anything can happen. You know, war is a very strange thing. A lot of bad things happen, a lot of good things happen. If you look at the Middle East, I would say prior to us hitting Iran so hard, we could have never made that deal because you would have had a dark cloud over the Middle East.
Over in West Asia, Iran Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Monday lashed out at the US accusing Washington and Donald Trump of the hypocrisy for claiming to support the Iranian people, while also maintaining sanctions that he said target civilians. Now, in a meeting with a group of young people, athletes and medalists, Khamenei defended Iran's missile and nuclear programs and said the country, in fact, would never yield to pressure or even enter negotiations dictated by force. By force, he meant the US or Washington. Meanwhile, Iran's top leader said that the nation's domestically built missiles made by the hands of Iranian youth had penetrated deep into Israeli territory and destroyed sensitive research centers during the 12-day war earlier this year. Now, that's a conflict which saw heavy Israeli airstrikes by the way and Iranian retaliatory missile fire. Here's Khamenei for you.
میگه من اهل معامله‌ام، میخوام معامله کنم، با ایران معامله کنیم. معامله ای که با زورگویی نتیجه او از پیش معلوم باشه معامله نیست، تحمیله و ملت ایران زیر بار تحمیل نخواهد رفت. ملت ایران زیر بار تحمیل نمیره. این اسمش معامله نیست. بنشینیم صحبت کنیم و نتیجه این بشود مشخص میکنه. این زورگویی است. ایران رو نمیشه مثل بعضی از کشورهای دیگه با این زورگویی ها تحت تاثیر قرار داد.
Senator Kaichi has won an historic vote to become Japan's first female prime minister ever. Now, Takaichi replaces Shigeru Ishiba, ending a 3-month political vacuum and wrangling or jostling since the Liberal Democratic Party's disastrous election loss in July this year. Ishiba, who lasted only 1 year as prime minister, the 64-year-old conservative is known as Japan's Iron Lady. In fact, she is an admirer of former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. This is, by the way, her third attempt at becoming the Japanese leader, and she's the 4th PM in 5 years from a scandal-hit party, the LDP. The White House on Monday started tearing down part of the East Wing, the traditional base of operations for the First Lady to build President Donald Trump's much-anticipated ballroom, despite lacking approval for constitution from the federal agency that generally oversees such projects. Dramatic photos of the demolition work showed a backhoe tearing into the East Wing facade and windows and other building parts in tatters on the ground. Now, some reporters watched from a park near the Treasury Department, which is right next door to the East Wing. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and the Second Lady Usha Vance are scheduled to visit Tuesday and meet with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister said in a speech. Now, two of U.S. President Donald Trump's envoys, in fact, traveled to Israel on Monday, that's yesterday, viewers, to shore up ceasefire in Gaza, the war-besieged enclave. It comes only a day after deadly violence gave the fragile deal its first major test. Meanwhile, U.S. Special Envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, met with Prime Minister Netanyahu about developments in the region. The three sons of former French President Nicolas Sarkozy arrived at his home on Tuesday. This as he heads to prison to serve time for a criminal conspiracy to finance his 2007 election campaign with funds from Libya. Now, the first ex-leader of modern France to be imprisoned, Sarkozy contests both the conviction and the judge's unusual decision to incarcerate him pending appeal. His journey from the presidential Élysée Palace to the notorious La Santé prison in Paris has captivated France. It's one of Sarkozy's sons, by the way, Louis, who's called for a rally Tuesday morning in support of his father in the high-end Paris neighborhood where Sarkozy lives with his wife, Carla Bruni Sarkozy. The U.S. federal government's shutdown had lasted 20 days as of Monday, dealing a heavy blow to the already jeopardized travel sector and small businesses across the country. Now, major museums in Washington, D.C., including the National Archives and the National Gallery of Art, began to shutter last Sunday due to the shutdown. The closure of these top attractions continued to affect catering, transportation, and hotel industries. Meanwhile, many Americans are also disappointed with the government shutdown, tired of the ongoing political struggles between the Democratic and the Republican parties, with many also now lamenting, viewers, that American society is becoming increasingly divided. We get you more.
I wish the shutdown hadn't happened during this time, but it is what it is. But as far as the division, yeah, it's pretty bad. I know friends from way back who are one side or the other, and they don't even talk anymore, so that's terrible.
It's slightly disappointing for sure because of the political disarrangements. Like common people are suffering. All this, yeah, not only like federal employees, but tourists like us.
Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson arrived ahead of facing the UK's national inquiry into the response to the COVID-19 pandemic on Tuesday, or the lack of response. Meanwhile, Johnson led the UK throughout the pandemic before being pushed out of his office by his own Conservative Party in mid-2022. He has previously acknowledged to the inquiry that the government was too slow to grasp the extent of the crisis, with critics also suggesting lockdown measures could have been imposed a few weeks earlier than the eventual dates of the 23rd of March in 2020. The UK, for perspective viewers, went on to have one of Europe's longest and strictest lockdowns, as well as one of the continent's highest COVID-19 death tolls, with the virus recorded as a cause of death for more than 232,000 people. In a scene that could have viewers come straight out of an Ocean's 11 film, thieves pulled off a high-stakes daytime raid at the Louvre in Paris, making off with priceless Napoleon-era jewels. That's correct. And there is still no trace of the robbers, and the Louvre, well, it is still closed as police investigate and comb through to find clues of this brazen heist. This report tells you more.
It was around 9:30 a.m., just after the museum opened its doors, when four masked individuals arrived at the gallery where the French crown jewels are on display. Video shows one of the suspected Louvre robbers brazenly cutting through a glass case using a mini chainsaw before making off with the loot during Sunday's heist at the Paris Art Gallery. The short clip shows the thief wearing a yellow reflective jacket over a black hoodie, casually cutting through the protective case. What the robbers took reads like the script of a heist movie. A tiara, necklace, and a single earring from the sapphire jewelry set of Queen Maria Amelia and Queen Hortense. An emerald necklace and a pair of emerald earrings from the set belonging to Empress Maria Louise, wife of Napoleon I. A large bodice bow brooch and a reliquary brooch of Empress Eugenie, wife of Napoleon III. And though the thieves attempted to take her crown too, the emerald and diamond crown of Empress Eugenie, the piece was dropped during the escape and later recovered, broken. This heist evokes the clever planning, coordinated roles, and high-stakes glamour of Ocean's 11, from the distraction to the gateway. The museum remains closed while forensic teams investigate. Specialists are combing CCTV from the scene side facade and tracking escape routes. With the item's historic and cultural value inestimable, authorities say time is critical. The longer the jewels are unaccounted for, the greater the risk of them being altered beyond recognition. So far, no details have been given about the identities of the robbers. NDTV Bureau Report.
Welcome back. You're watching the Tuesday edition of the World Report. I'm Arjun, Samar, Mahendran. Over to news from the world of business, where Amazon Web Services claims it has finally fixed the underlying problem that had disrupted many of the world's biggest websites and apps included. And also that all services have quote-unquote returned to normal operations. Among those affected earlier were Snapchat, Duolingo and Roblox, with Platform Outage Monitor Down Detector saying users are reporting issues with apps like Grok, Lyft and even Hulu. Here's more.
DNS system is effectively the system that translates skynews.com into a series of numbers called your Internet Protocol or IP address. The IP address is the way that the web works effectively, knowing where to route you on the whole of the internet in order to serve you your website. So the issue that we've identified with Amazon saying that they've had problems with this DNS resolution is effectively an inability to translate those basic terms of the words into the numbers that get you to an actual website. And that might seem like it's not a huge issue, but that is a problem because obviously that results in people not being able to log on to websites.
McLaren boss Andrea Stella said the Formula One Drivers' Championship was still in his team's hands despite a dominant US Grand Prix weekend for Red Bull's Max Verstappen. McLaren has, by the way, already clinched the Constructors' title for a second successive year and has Australian Oscar Piastri leading the drivers' standings by 14 points from British teammate Lando Norris. Now, the working team viewers last won the drivers' crown with Lewis Hamilton back in 2008 and also has not competed in a championship double since 1998. Dozens of people were injured, including police officers, when plans clashed during a soccer game in Tel Aviv, Israel, forcing police to cancel the match and evacuate tens of thousands of people. In a statement early Monday morning, a spokesman for the Israeli police said dozens of flares and 50 smoke grenades were thrown onto the field by quote-unquote lawless fans, injuring 42 people, including 5 police officers as well. Meanwhile, police arrested dozens, 11 of who were imprisoned and brought to the court, with the rest released under restrictive conditions, said the police statement. US President Donald Trump on Monday honored NCAA baseball champions LSU and NAIA champs LSU Shreveport with a joint White House celebration to mark their stellar 2025 season. Now, the LSU Tigers swept Coastal Carolina in the College World Series, while the LSU Shreveport Pilots went on a perfect 59-0 en route to their title. Here's Trump for you.
I'm so busy I don't get to watch baseball too much. I did watch the other night, however. I turned on, and there happened to be a Japanese player who was not bad. He was one of the best pitchers I've ever seen, one of the best hitters I've ever seen, and that all makes for a nice contract. He's pretty good, right? Pretty amazing when you think. They say one of the best games ever played because you had pitching and hitting with the same guy.
Well, that's all the updates we have for you this Tuesday. Take care and have a wonderful day.